Something has shifted in the heart of the person connected to you, and the request they are preparing to make may be the last thing you expect. This is not going to sound like an ordinary confession. It is not simply, "I miss you." It is not simply, "Can we talk?" What they want to ask from you goes much deeper than that, because before they can move toward the future they secretly imagine with you, they believe they need one thing from you first. And when you discover what that one thing is, everything that has confused you about their behavior may suddenly begin to make sense. There has been a battle happening inside this person. A battle between what they feel and what they are afraid to admit. They have tried distracting themselves. They have tried behaving as though the connection could simply disappear if they stopped paying attention to it. They may even have convinced other people that they were completely fine. But something kept bringing their thoughts back to you. A memory. A conversation. A photograph. A place. A song. Sometimes nothing triggered it at all. Your name simply appeared in their mind. And that is where this story becomes strange, because the more they tried to silence what they felt, the stronger one particular question became. They started wondering, if I came back honestly, would they still hear me? That question has been haunting them. Not because they believe you are cruel, but because they know something has changed. You are not standing emotionally where you once stood. You have grown. You have become more careful about who receives access to your heart. And somewhere inside themselves, they know they cannot approach you with the same uncertainty, half-truths, hesitation, or mixed signals they may have carried before. That is why the request coming toward you is shocking. They are preparing to ask you for another chance to show you who they really are. But there is more. Because they are not only asking for another chance at love. They are preparing to ask whether you can forgive something you may not even know happened. Stay with that. Because this is where the hidden piece begins to surface. There was a moment when this person had an opportunity to be honest about you. Someone asked them directly how they felt. And instead of telling the truth, they minimized it. They acted casual. They pretended you did not affect them deeply. They may have said something that sounded like, "It isn't serious," or, "We're just talking," or even, "I don't know what I want." But the moment those words left their mouth, they regretted them. Because they knew they were lying. Not necessarily to hurt you. They were lying because the truth frightened them. The truth was that you had already become important. Much more important than they wanted anyone else to know. And someone noticed. One person in particular saw through the performance. They watched your soulmate's expression change whenever your name came up. They noticed the sudden silence. The defensive reaction. The way this person would pretend not to care while somehow remembering every tiny detail about you. And eventually that person confronted them. They said something that hit harder than expected. You're going to lose this person because you're too scared to admit what you feel. Your soulmate laughed it off. At first. But later, when they were alone, those words returned. Again. And again. And again. Because deep down, they knew it was true. And then something happened that changed the entire emotional direction of this connection. They saw you becoming stronger without them. Maybe they heard something about you. Maybe they noticed a change in the way you communicated. Maybe your silence became different. There is a difference between the silence of someone waiting and the silence of someone healing. They felt that difference. Suddenly, they realized you might actually continue your life without them. And strangely, that possibility awakened the courage they had been avoiding. Because losing you in imagination was painful. But realizing it could actually happen was unbearable. That was when the request began forming. They started rehearsing conversations that have not happened yet. They imagined standing in front of you. They imagined hearing your voice. They imagined what they would say if you asked the question they fear most. Why did you wait so long? And they do not have an easy answer. Because the answer involves pride, fear, outside influence, bad timing, emotional immaturity, and one secret decision that they now wish they could reverse. There was a point when they deliberately created distance. Yes. Deliberately. They convinced themselves that stepping away would help them understand whether what they felt for you was real. They thought distance would weaken the connection. Instead, distance exposed it. The less they saw you, the more they noticed your absence. The fewer conversations they had with you, the more they replayed old ones. The harder they tried moving forward, the more they compared everything new to something they experienced with you. That was not what they expected. And eventually they reached an uncomfortable realization. They were not confused about you. They were afraid of what loving you might require them to change. That is completely different. You represented seriousness. You represented vulnerability. You represented the possibility of building something that could actually matter. And when someone has spent a long time protecting themselves emotionally, genuine love can feel more frightening than loneliness. Loneliness is familiar. Real connection is unpredictable. But now your soulmate has reached a point where staying silent feels more painful than taking the risk. And heaven wants you prepared, because when this conversation begins, it may begin suddenly. Not perfectly. Not like a movie scene. It could begin with something extremely simple. Can I ask you something? Those words may appear innocent. But behind them could be weeks, months, or even years of thoughts. They may hesitate. They may change the subject once. They may struggle to look directly at you. Because the request is not simply, "Will you take me back?" The deeper request is, "Will you allow me to tell you everything before you decide what I deserve?" That is what they truly want. A chance to explain. A chance to finally put the missing pieces on the table. Because there are things about their behavior you interpreted one way while something completely different was happening underneath. For example, there may have been a time when you believed they were ignoring you. But they were actually staring at your message without knowing how to respond. There may have been a moment when you believed they had forgotten you. But they were quietly checking whether you were okay. There may have been a period when you thought someone else had replaced you. Yet even while they were surrounded by other people, your memory remained the comparison they could not escape. But be careful here. Feelings alone are not enough. And this is part of the preparation. If someone returns to your life, beautiful words should not automatically erase painful patterns. You are allowed to listen without immediately surrendering your boundaries. You are allowed to care and still ask questions. You are allowed to love someone and still require honesty. Because the request coming from this person carries weight. And they know it. That is why they are terrified you may say no. They have imagined your rejection more times than you realize. They have pictured you looking at them calmly and saying, "It's too late." Those 3 words frighten them more than almost anything. Because they know there was a time when you would have made everything easy for them. There was a time when your heart was open. There was a time when one honest conversation might have solved so much. But they waited. And now they know the situation is different. They must earn what they once could have simply received. That realization has humbled them. But now we reach the revelation they have been hiding. Remember the person who warned them they could lose you? That person recently brought you up again. And this time your soulmate did not pretend. They admitted it. They admitted that they still think about you. They admitted that something feels unfinished. And most importantly, they admitted that if they had one genuine opportunity to speak with you without interference, pride, or fear, they would tell you the truth. The person listening asked, "What truth?" There was a long silence. And then your soulmate said something they had apparently struggled to say aloud. "I think that was the person I was supposed to choose." Imagine the weight of that sentence. Because it means they have finally started understanding what they once treated casually. They did not recognize the value of the connection while they were busy protecting themselves from it. Now they do. But recognition came with another painful discovery. Someone else may be noticing you too. And your soulmate knows it. That has accelerated everything. They realize the world is not going to keep you emotionally available forever while they decide whether to become courageous. Someone else could recognize your value without needing years to understand it. Someone else could give you the consistency they hesitated to offer. And suddenly your soulmate is confronting a terrifying possibility. They could lose you not because you stopped caring, but because someone else finally cared correctly. That possibility has shaken them. And this is where the shocking request becomes even bigger. They may ask you not to make a final decision about your future until you hear what they have to say. Not because they own you. They don't. Not because you owe them anything. You don't. But because they desperately want one honest conversation before the door closes. They want to tell you what happened during the silence. They want to tell you who influenced them. They want to tell you what they were afraid of. And there is one confession they are saving until the end. A confession involving a future they imagined with you long before they admitted they were in love. At some point, this person secretly pictured ordinary life beside you. Not fantasy. Ordinary life. Waking up near you. Going somewhere together. Introducing you differently. Celebrating something important. Sitting beside you years from now. Maybe even building a home or family. And that vision scared them because it felt too real. That is why their behavior may have seemed contradictory. One moment they moved closer. The next moment they pulled away. The closer the connection became, the more they realized how much they could lose. But something has changed inside them now. They are tired of running from possibilities simply because those possibilities matter. They have started asking themselves a new question. What if I spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I had just been honest? That question is pushing them toward you. Yet there is another twist. The shocking request may not happen in the form you expect. They might not immediately ask for a relationship. Instead, they may ask for something much smaller. Can we start again? Not erase history. Not pretend nothing happened. Start again with truth. They want the opportunity to meet the version of you that exists now. Because they know you have changed. And they want you to meet the version of them that supposedly emerged from everything they went through. But there is something you need to notice when this happens. Listen carefully to whether they take responsibility. There is a huge difference between "I disappeared because everything was complicated" and "I disappeared because I was afraid, and I hurt you by doing that." One explains. The other owns. If this person has truly changed, they will not spend the entire conversation blaming circumstances. They will acknowledge choices. They will acknowledge consequences. They will understand that rebuilding trust cannot be demanded. And strangely, this may be exactly what makes the conversation emotional. Because your soulmate is preparing themselves for the possibility that your answer may not be immediate. They are learning that love cannot force timing. They may finally be ready to say, "Take whatever time you need." Those words would represent enormous growth for someone who once avoided vulnerability. But wait. There is still something they haven't told anyone. Something connected to the shocking request itself. Your soulmate has kept something from the earlier days of your connection. It could be a message, a photograph, a note, a small object, something seemingly meaningless to everyone else. But they kept it. Why? Because it represented a moment when they felt genuinely seen by you. On difficult days, they returned to that memory. And every time they did, one thought followed. I should have handled this differently. That regret has been building. But regret alone does not create transformation. Action does. And your soulmate seems to understand that now. That is why the next phase is not about another hidden feeling. It is about movement. Something is approaching the point where words have to leave their mind and enter reality. The message must be sent. The call must be made. The conversation must happen. The truth must finally survive outside their imagination. And when it does, you may hear something you never expected them to admit. They may tell you, I pushed you away because I knew I was falling for you. Think about how shocking that would be. Because you may have interpreted their distance as lack of interest. But for them, distance may have been a defense against intensity. That does not automatically excuse anything. But it could finally explain the contradiction. And then comes the request. The one they are struggling to phrase correctly. They want you to give them permission to prove themselves through actions instead of asking you to trust promises. In other words, don't believe me immediately. Just watch what I do. That is different. Because somewhere along the way, they realized that words may no longer be enough. They cannot simply arrive with emotion and expect access. They must demonstrate consistency. And heaven wants you prepared not so that you automatically say yes, but so that emotion does not make the decision for you. Your heart may react before your mind catches up. Hearing someone's long-hidden confession can awaken memories you believed you had already buried. Suddenly, you may remember everything. The first conversation. The first time something felt different. The first moment you wondered whether this person might become important. The confusion. The silence. The nights when you wished they would simply explain themselves. And now, after all that time, the explanation could finally be approaching. But the greatest surprise is still ahead. Because your soulmate's request is connected to a promise they made privately. They decided that if they ever got another genuine opportunity with you, they would stop hiding the connection from other people. No more pretending. No more allowing outside opinions to control the relationship. No more keeping one foot outside the door. They want to choose openly. And that is enormous for them. Especially because one particular person may not approve. Someone around your soulmate benefited from the distance between you. Maybe this person enjoyed having influence. Maybe they were protective. Maybe jealous. Maybe they simply believed they knew what was best. Whatever the reason, their opinion became louder than it should have. Your soulmate listened. And eventually discovered something painful. The people giving advice did not have to live with the consequences. Your soulmate did. They were the one lying awake. They were the one missing you. They were the one wondering whether you had moved on. They were the one carrying regret. So something changed. They stopped asking everyone else what they should do. And started asking themselves what they actually wanted. The answer was uncomfortable. Because the answer led back to you. Now everything depends on courage. There is a message they have considered sending more than once. They typed it. Deleted it. Typed something different. Deleted that too. At one point, they nearly sent it. Then fear won again. But next time may be different. Because the fear of contacting you is slowly becoming smaller than the fear of losing the opportunity forever. And when that balance changes, people act. This is why you are being prepared emotionally. Not to wait by the phone. Not to put your life on hold. But to understand that if this person appears again, you are allowed to respond from strength instead of shock. Ask yourself what you truly need. Not what they want. What do you need to feel respected? What would rebuilding trust actually require? What behavior would prove that this is more than loneliness or nostalgia? Because your soulmate may come carrying powerful emotion. But your future deserves more than powerful emotion. It deserves stability. And here is the revelation that may change how you see everything. They already know this. That is why their request is not simply for love. It is for time. Time to demonstrate change. Time to show consistency. Time to rebuild something they know they damaged. And if you decide not to give that time, they know they may have to accept it. That is perhaps the hardest lesson they have learned. Love does not guarantee access. But they still need to tell you the truth. Because carrying it silently has become impossible. There is something they want you to know even if you never choose them again. You mattered. You were never insignificant. The connection affected them more deeply than their behavior showed. And losing your presence forced them to confront parts of themselves they had avoided for years. You became a mirror. That is why they ran. Not because the mirror was ugly. Because it was accurate. You reflected their fear of commitment. Their fear of rejection. Their need for control. Their habit of pretending they did not care when they cared too much. And eventually they had nowhere left to hide from themselves. Now they are preparing to return to the person who unknowingly started that transformation. You. But there is one final piece. One sentence they have imagined saying to you when everything else has finally been confessed. They have practiced it privately. They know it could change everything. They know you might cry. They know they might cry. Because after all the explanations, apologies, and truths, they want to look at you and ask. If there is even a small part of you that still believes in us, will you let me earn the future I was too afraid to choose before? That is the shocking request. Not a demand. Not ownership. A request to earn. A request for one door not to be permanently closed before they can show you who they have become. And whatever happens next, remember something important. You do not have to answer immediately. Because sometimes the most powerful answer is, show me. If they mean what they say, time will reveal it. If they have changed, consistency will reveal it. If their intentions are real, patience will reveal it.